The morning sun shone through the curtains, as it had done every day for the past few weeks. I was 62, retired from the NYPD, and finally at peace. No more chasing criminals down alleys, no more bullets, and no more sleepless nights. My name is Victor D'Souza, and I served the city for 30 years. When I retired, I had a decent-sized pension. It was enough to live off of, and it was enough to enjoy life. It was then that Marcus Vale called. Marcus was my partner, and we had been best friends for over 20 years. He was charming, articulate, and always had a business proposition. I was a gruff detective who could read people like an open book. He had it in him, but I had the experience. And so I trusted him when he asked me to invest in his restaurant chain, Vale's Kitchen. He told me that he was planning on opening 5 restaurants in New York, and that I would be his partner. We shook hands on it, and I gave him all the money I had. The first year we lost money, but I did not complain. I went to the restaurants and worked myself into a menial laborer. I cleaned tables and fixed broken chairs. I did it all, and it was all for Marcus. He told me that I was a legend, and we would make it big. The second year came, and the restaurant started doing well. People came from all over to taste the food, and the money started rolling in. I saw the changes in Marcus, and I did not like them. He stopped returning my calls and hired new managers without telling me. He even stopped coming to the restaurants. One evening, I went to the main restaurant on Broadway. The staff looked uneasy as I walked in, and I went straight to the office. On the wall, I saw a certificate that was not there before. It was a partnership certificate, and it stated that it was between Marcus Vale and no one else. I turned to the manager and asked him where my name was. He looked down at the certificate and said that Mr. Vale had told them that I was no longer a partner. I called Marcus, but he did not pick up. I sent him emails, but he did not reply. After 3 days, he finally met me at a coffee shop. He sat across from me and said, "Victor, you're old, and you do not understand modern business practices. The investors want new blood, and you are just a phase. I am sorry, but your name is no longer on the certificate. You were never a partner." I said, "Marcus, we had an agreement and we were both partners. Where is my share of the profits?" He replied, "That agreement is dissolved, and you're just a retired cop with empty pockets. Go back to your pension and leave me alone." I left the coffee shop, and the $20 bill he had left me on the table bought me a glass of juice. As I walked back, I was shaking with rage. The betrayal was more than I could take, but I did not cry. I did not break anything, and I did not go on a drunken rampage. I did what any good detective would do in such a situation. I went back to my shoebox and dug up old emails. For the next 48 hours, I went through every piece of paper in that box. Emails, documents, and handwritten notes were all there, and every single one of them spoke of our friendship. The agreement was there, and it stated that both Marcus and I were partners with an equal share of profits. It also stated that the agreement would only be dissolved with mutual consent, and that both parties had to sign a document dissolving the partnership. Marcus had forged my signature on a document that took away my share of the profits. But I had one thing that he did not. I had proof that the agreement was not dissolved, and I was still a partner in Vale's kitchen. He had thought that I would be a gullible old man who would not understand modern business practices. But he was wrong. He had made the mistake of crossing me, and I was going to make sure he paid for it dearly. I called my daughter, Elena, the next morning. She was a corporate lawyer, and I told her everything that had happened. She listened patiently and said, "Dad, you have the strongest case I have ever heard in my life. This is not just a civil case. This is a criminal case. They committed fraud, and they have to pay for their actions." She went to his office and sent him a cease and desist letter. But he sent me an email saying that I had no evidence to support my claims, and that I was just an old man making false allegations. He was wrong, but he did not know it yet. Alina saved the email, and she made several copies of it. I went to every bank we had an account in, and I pulled every document I could find. I had all the evidence I needed to take him down. A month went by, and I was ready to take him down. He had thrown a party to celebrate the opening of his 5th restaurant, but I was not invited. However, I hired a private investigator to go to the party and record everything. He came to me the next day and said, "Sir, Mr. Vale was boasting to his investors at the party. He said that he got rid of his old partner and that it was easy. He was a gullible old man who gave him all his money." I was fuming with rage, but I had to stay calm. I knew this was only the beginning, and I had to take it slow. Elena filed a lawsuit against him, and the court sent a subpoena to his office. He received it, and he called me 7 times in an hour. I did not answer, but he sent me a message saying that we could settle the dispute privately. He said that he would give me $50,000, but I knew he was lying. He stole over $2 million from me, and $50,000 was not enough to keep me quiet. The day of the trial arrived, and I wore my best navy suit. Elena helped me tie my tie and said, "Dad, today we show the world who you really are. Not just a victim, but a warrior." The courtroom was packed with journalists and investors and former colleagues. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with his lawyers, and he looked confident. He even smiled when I walked in, but I was not intimidated. I had spent 30 years chasing criminals, and I was not afraid of a conman. Judge Harrison was a stern-looking woman with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through me. She had seen thousands of cases like this one, and she was not easily fooled. The prosecution began, and Alina stood up to present our case. She began by showing the court the partnership agreement. It stated that both Marcus and I were partners, and it had our signatures at the bottom. She then showed the court the forged document that took away my share of the profits. She called in a handwriting expert to testify that the signature on the document was not mine, and the court was convinced. She then showed the court the emails that Marcus had sent me. They were all about how he had changed the agreement, and that I would no longer be a partner. She played the video that the investigator had recorded of Marcus talking to his investors, and the court was silent as he boasted about how easily he had taken advantage of me. Judge Harrison asked Marcus to testify, and he looked nervous as he took the stand. He said, "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding, and I was just joking when I said that I changed the agreement. The email was taken out of context, and I was always a silent partner in the restaurant. I never intended to hurt Victor's feelings, but I was just trying to make more money." I stood up and said, "Your Honor, I have evidence that shows that I was always a partner in the restaurant, and I have documents that show that I invested a lot of my personal money into it. I have photos of me cleaning the restaurant and fixing broken chairs. I was not a silent partner. I was a hard-working man who believed in Marcus's dream." Elena submitted all the documents to the court, and Judge Harrison examined them closely. For 3 hours, she looked at every piece of evidence before finally saying, "Mr. Vale, the evidence against you is overwhelming, and I find you guilty of forging documents and stealing from Mr. D'Souza. This is not just a civil case. It is a criminal case, and I will take appropriate legal action against you." Marcus was devastated, and he began crying. He said, "Your Honor, I made a mistake, and I am sorry for hurting Victor's feelings. Please give me another chance, and I promise never to do it again." It was too late for him, and the judge sentenced him to prison for 5 years for forging documents and stealing from me. She also ordered him to pay me all the money he had stolen from me, and she threatened to take criminal action against him if he did not comply. The courtroom was filled with journalists, and they all rushed to me as soon as the verdict was out. I did not say anything, but my daughter hugged me and said, "You did it, Dad." Justice was served. I looked at Marcus one last time before he was led away in handcuffs, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. 3 months later, the court ordered Marcus to pay me $2,400,000, but he did not comply. He tried to appeal the decision, but the judge denied his request. His reputation was ruined, and his investors pulled out their funding, leaving him bankrupt. All 5 of his restaurants were closed down, and the man who thought he was a king was nothing but a conman. I did not celebrate his downfall, but I was glad that justice was served. I donated a large sum of the money to a charity that helped people with financial problems, and I used the rest to open a consulting firm. I helped small business owners avoid scams, and I used my detective skills to help them. It was my new mission in life, and it was a fitting end to my 30-year career as a detective. One evening, I walked past the old restaurant on Broadway. It was empty, and the sign was gone, but I could still see the memories. I looked at the boarded-up windows and smiled. All those years of hard work and dedication had led to this moment, and it was sweet. I knew that greed had corrupted Marcus, and it had made him blind to the friendship we once shared. He thought he could take everything from me and leave me with nothing, but he was wrong. I learned a valuable lesson from this experience, and it was one that no amount of detective work could teach me. Sometimes the criminals were not the ones in dark alleyways. They were the ones we trusted and called friends. And sometimes the truth was not as easy to find as we thought, but it always came out in the end. I returned home that evening, and my daughter cooked dinner for me. She looked at me and said, "Dad, you inspired a lot of people, and they wrote to us. Other victims of fraud also thanked you for fighting for them." I smiled at her and said, "That's nice, but I am most happy that you are safe, and I can still see the sunrise every morning." Life went on, and I continued to help people. I opened a consulting firm, and I used my detective skills to help small business owners avoid scams. It was my new mission in life, and it was a fitting end to my 30-year career as a detective. So if you are reading this, and you have been a victim of fraud, please know that I understand what you are going through. Do not let the silence swallow you whole, and do not let the fear stop you from fighting for what is right. Fight for the truth and fight for justice, and the world will always reward you for it.